VP Tim Walz is being accused of lying about his rank, which is called stolen valor. But in Walz's defense in Minneapolis, stealing is legal. But misrepresenting your past for political gain? I don't see that as a problem, said one woman. Yeah, well, Walz's expression throughout the entire time did not convey steadiness. No. Like almost like unsteady weirdness.
Like he could have been one of the Three Stooges, just like.
Yeah.
I waiting for an anvil to
I
fall
go back to Walz was shot.
If that guy got into power.
And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness.
Like if Kamala died and Tim Walz, Tampon Tim, was our president.
I used to think the Democrats were crazy for saying that men have periods, but then I met Tim Walz.
You know how crazy this country would be?
These guys come up with the weirdest damn ideas that you will ever imagine. You know it's true.
That weirdo who puts tampons in the boys' room. What about our
If clueless leadership had a face, it'd be Tim Walz squinting at the chaos he orchestrated. But don't worry, Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld just rolled in, armed with flamethrowers of sarcasm and zero tolerance. Ever seen a governor get politically vaporized while still trying to ban plastic straws? Grab the popcorn, this roast is hotter than Walsh's approval rating is low. The verbal body slams are brutal. This isn't just a takedown, it's a full-on demolition.
Bring in her, and they bring in this other guy who's radical from Minnesota. That's the vice president, who he believes a lot of wild things. One of them is transgender surgery for people who are under 13. Another one is abortion up until 9 months.
Ooh.
Yeah. He changed the Minnesota state flag to make it look like a Somali flag. That stuff scares the fuck out of me.
Ah yes, Tim Walz, the man who governs Minnesota like it's a small-town high school musical, somehow cast as both the principal and the janitor. A guy so proudly mediocre, he makes beige look daring. If leadership had a color, Tim Walz would be that mysterious gray carpet stain impossible to clean, but everyone keeps pretending not to see it.
We saw just recently Donald Trump's executive order to make it more difficult, specifically to women, trying to make it more difficult for women to be able to vote. We see one of the first things they do is try and restrict the vote.
Wait, so Trump is making it more difficult for women to vote? How so? Math problems? But it's further proof that the most dangerous thing for a leftist is a follow-up question, which is why you never hear any. But I guess questioning elections is okay now. But the best moment came when Walz forgot who
Joe Rogan didn't even need DMT to start hallucinating over Walsh's decision-making. The man's entire policy portfolio reads like it was scrawled on a Taco Bell napkin during a low blood sugar crash. Every time Walsh opens his mouth, you can practically hear a statewide sigh from Minnesotans louder than the chaos after a Taylor Swift concert gets canceled.
Complete pathological liar.
Let's be honest, there are outsiders coming into communities, stealing and moving jobs away, and making life harder for people living there. And they have names, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance.
Complete liar. Lied about being in Tiananmen Square, lied about being a head coach of a football team.
Because this started, and I love this story, as a young prosecutor. Kamala Harris talked about going in that courtroom for the first time.
Pathological liars, people that are habitual liars, they just lie all the time about everything. Yeah. Oh, you didn't deploy for war. You didn't. Why are you saying you deployed at war? The weapons you used in war? No, you were in war.
I plan on waking up on November 6th with Madam President.
I want to be clear, you won't be waking up together.
No, you weren't a head coach, you were the water boy. What the fuck are you talking about?
I thought some of that was weird.
It's just a...
Greg Gutfeld took one look at Walsh's governance and called it performance art for the terminally confused. And that was him being generous. Tim Walz runs the state like it's a side hustle between fantasy football drafts, governing with the urgency of a guy who thinks an executive order is something you grab off the menu at Pinnacle.
Tim Walz vomits more nonsense.
I called Donald Trump a wannabe dictator. It's because he is. But when it's adult like Donald Trump, you bully the out of him back. This is a weak, cruel man that takes it out and punches down on people.
Wow. Oh. Jamie.
What a
Painful,
douchebag,
huh?
Greg. That was absolutely painful. He was the keynote speaker at this conference. Can you imagine having to watch more of that?
Yeah.
Let's not forget Tim Walsh's legendary gift for saying absolutely nothing in as many words as possible. He speaks like a malfunctioning TED Talk, all frantic pacing, vague hand gestures, and buzzwords like equity and systemic tossed around like glitter bombs at a kindergartner's birthday party. It's progressive word salad with no dressing, just dry. Wilted kale and the bitter aftertaste of tax hikes. Joe Rogan tried to make sense of Walsh's pandemic policies and ended up needing a shaman, a sensory deprivation tank, and a support group. His exact words, "Wait, so bars are closed, but strip clubs can stay open if they also sell Hot Pockets." That's peak Walsh logic. He approached COVID policy like someone spinning a prize wheel labeled lockdown, curfew, and shrug emoji. Walsh declared emergency powers with the glee of a teenager discovering cheat codes, except this wasn't Grand Theft Auto, it was Minnesota. And instead of faster cars and unlimited ammo, we got mask mandates that changed more often than his approval ratings.
Holy shit. He said what?
What is a woman is the question.
I'm not sure I understand the question here.
Okay.
What do you want me to say?
I want you to say that a woman like me is an adult human female, that men can't become women. You guys are the party of violence, and you're the party erasing women who don't respect us. You're a bigot. You're a misogynist. You're a sexist. Mr. Chairman,
Greg Gutfeld called him America's hall monitor with a messiah complex, and honestly, that's generous. Tim Walsh doesn't just walk into a room. He floats in like he's about to deliver us from evil, using a PowerPoint and a lavender-scented candle. He governs like he's running a yoga retreat for emotionally fragile policy interns. Not an actual state. Every press conference feels like a TED Talk hosted by a substitute geography teacher who just discovered mindfulness. He doesn't fix problems, he narrates them, in a soft voice, with the emotional urgency of someone explaining how to compost. As for crisis management, picture someone trying to put out a grease fire with a vision board. Wildfires, task force, police reform. Another task force with matching lanyards and laminated mission statements. Inflation, a weekly task force meeting to define it via interpretive dance. If a volcano ever erupted in Minnesota, Walsh wouldn't evacuate, he'd launch a volcanic inclusion and dialogue initiative and hand out complimentary lava-proof fanny packs.
Walz is lost, but mourning it. Now, the truth is that a VP debate is like a colonoscopy. It's important and necessary, but that doesn't mean you want to watch it.
Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Even a deer in the headlights is screaming, "Get the out of the way, dude!"
When crime started surging, Tim Walsh responded like he was reviewing a disappointing brunch menu, mildly concerned. A furrowed brow for effect, then right back to launching another commission with a trendy logo and a mission statement that says absolutely nothing. Under his watch, Minnesota Nice turned into Minnesota Brace Yourself. You're more likely to get mugged outside a Whole Foods than find a parking spot. Criminals aren't worried, they're networking at this point. Minneapolis isn't a city anymore. It's a group project where no one wants to lead but everyone insists on being heard. Joe Rogan nearly choked on his elk meat laughing at Walsh's softened crime policies, and that says something, because Rogan usually reserves that level of disbelief for Bigfoot documentaries and vegan cheese. Under Walsh, public safety feels more like an experimental art exhibit, abstract, confusing, and definitely not comforting. His strategy: don't police, just process. Carjackers get empathy seminars, shoplifters, restorative poetry readings. It's not law enforcement, it's group therapy for felons.
This video of Tim Walz doing the exact same thing.
Right.
Exact same thing, and
Yes.
he said, of course, it's a Nazi salute. He said that.
Right.
We spent 3 days debating, having them trying to debate that President Musk gave a Nazi salute. Of course he did. But that is a distraction.
This is how crazy.
Greg Gutfeld joked that if Tim Walsh were a superhero, his power would be making burglars feel validated, and he's not wrong. In Minnesota, the only people getting faster government responses than repeat offenders are vegan bicycle activists, with a minor in equity studies. Meanwhile, small businesses got steamrolled like squirrels at a monster truck rally during the pandemic. Walsh's restrictions were so convoluted they needed their own glossary. Restaurants had to operate like covert spy agencies, open one day, soup kitchens for squirrels the next, Hair salons were locked down tighter than CIA bunkers, while big box stores kept humming because apparently, if you sell patio furniture and existential dread in bulk, you're essential. Joe Rogan nailed it. Walsh's policies weren't based on science, they were based on vibes, virtue, and whatever his consultant's vision board whispered that morning. It was like he believed the virus only targeted small-batch coffee drinkers and locally sourced sandwich artisans. If you sold crafts or lived within 5 blocks of a coop, you got hit with restrictions faster than you could say artisan sourdough. Minnesota had a spirit animal under Walsh. It'd be a deer frozen in headlights, wearing a mask, holding a community feedback form.
It's lost, but one of them, Politico says, is like Walz's wide eyes showed his passion and emotional intensity. Can we show that? There is wide eyes. That humans would widen their eyes to convey that danger is close. What emotion are you getting from that?
Sorry. Still. That was every...
And let's not ignore Tim Walsh's quiet war on education. He claims to be pro-teacher, yet somehow Minnesota students are graduating knowing less about math and more about their identity gardens. Under Walsh, schools have morphed into therapy sessions with vending machines. Kids can't read cursive, but they've written 14 essays on microaggressions and the historical trauma of standardized tests. Greg Gutfeld nailed it. If a kid asked Tim Walsh how to divide fractions, he'd create a racial equity commission. And he's not wrong. Walsh treats actual academic performance like a colonial relic, better buried than addressed. Joe Rogan summed it up best. Minnesota's education plan under Walsh is basically no child left behind as long as the child doesn't ask for grades, discipline, or coherent curricula. It's a carnival of lowered expectations, and when test scores nosedive, no worries. Walsh just blames systemic oppression and proposes a taxpayer-funded feelings workshop. Under Walsh, progressive means spending more to achieve less. The infrastructure is still crumbling. The roads are still pothole obstacle courses, and taxes are higher than Snoop Dogg in a Colorado dispensary. Yet Walsh struts around like the second coming of FDR, just with a Fitbit and fewer accomplishments.
Like you're just trying to debunk something, especially now when there's all this scrutiny being paid attention to what this guy's done. What have you, what's the false stuff, Jamie? It's not the flag itself, correct?
I typed in, I was just trying to even get to it. A whole bunch of stories are popping up. I'll just show you this. Like, no, he didn't give him a Somali flag. No, he didn't change it to resemble Somali. False Somali.
But what does it look? Okay, but what does it look like now? Do you care what the flag looks like, first of all? And why do you get to change the flag? How crazy is that the governor gets to change the flag?
Joe Rogan described Tim Walsh as the human version of a Prius, quiet, self-important, and constantly in the way. Greg Gutfeld one-upped him. If mediocrity had a face, it'd be hosting a ribbon cutting while crime spikes behind him. And Minnesota just keeps clapping like it's the school play and everyone's too afraid to boo. Because the drama teacher looks like he might cry. Walsh's speeches are TEDx fever dreams. Everything's a conversation. No real action, just hashtags, town halls, and public-private partnerships that spend a lot of money and deliver absolutely nothing. His leadership style: leading from the middle of the road because committing to a direction might be problematic. And let's not forget his green energy crusade. It sounds noble until you realize it means bulldozing farmland for solar panels and banning gas-powered lawnmowers like they're weapons of mass destruction. Walsh wants Minnesota to be net zero by 2050. But half the state still can't get reliable broadband or a plowed street.
To be criticized for embellishing his rank and service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resign. When reached for comment, Walz yelled, "Hey, look over there!" and then ran away. Although Walz's actions look bad to veterans, Dems say these revelations could really help.
Joe Rogan rolled his eyes so hard reading Walsh's climate proposal, he nearly dislocated something. "Bro," he said, "this guy is banning plastic straws in a place where the air hurts your face 7 months out of the year." Walsh thinks he's saving the planet, but all he's doing is making life more expensive for people who can't afford his delusional eco-fantasy. Greg Gutfeld chimed in. He's fighting climate change with Instagram graphics and a taxpayer-funded bird sanctuary. You'd think Minnesota was personally responsible for global warming the way Walz carries on. Meanwhile, real working families are stuck choosing between groceries and electric bills, but hey, at least the bike lanes are wider. Walz governs like he's trying to win an NPR raffle, not manage a state full of people with jobs, mortgages, and zero tolerance for political performance art. His budget priorities read like a sociology major's wish list: no student debt, a gluten intolerance, and a deep love of taxpayer-funded consultants. More money for feelings, less for police. More for sensitivity workshops, less for fixing roads. More time listening, less time doing literally anything useful.
100% right with Tim Walz.
Saying on my phone, I know some of you know this on the iPhone, they've got that little stock app. I added Tesla to it to give me a little boost during the day. 225 and dropping.
I mean, that guy was almost the vice president of the United States. I'm sure you've seen that thing where it shows Obama saying, "I need a vice president that's dumber than me."
And
then it's Biden, and Biden saying, "I need a vice president dumber than me," and it's Kamala, and Kamala saying, "I need a vice president dumber than me," and it's Walz.
This is why
men have tampons.
I used to think the Democrats were crazy for saying that men have periods, but then I met
Joe Rogan says talking to Tim Walz is like arguing with a malfunctioning Alexa. Buzzwords, long-winded answers, and zero results. Greg Gutfeld calls him Midwestern guilt in a suit, trying to be woke, practical, and painfully boring all at once. He bans flavored vapes, lets crime surge, taxes the poor, and still acts like he's Moses coming down from Mount Wobegon with a PowerPoint and a savior complex.
About these old white guys who seem to disappoint us on a regular basis in this country.
Dude. You're an old white guy. And you're right, you are a huge disappointment. I guess hating himself is the first thing he's nailed correctly. Because Walz saying old white men suck isn't a political stance, it's his confession. Walz calling people old and white is like Maxine Waters making fun of someone for shopping at Wigs R Us. He wants to execute more DEI policies, and Trump wants to execute murderous gangs.
Joe Rogan laughed at Tim Walz's equity dashboard, calling it pointless. People want safe, functioning cities, not more charts and buzzwords. Walz talks a lot but gets little done, using confusing terms instead of real solutions. He's like a substitute teacher who seemed fun but never taught anything and somehow got promoted. Now Minnesota's stuck with him, and not much to show for it.
Get in charge one more time. I mean, they were talking about cracking down on hate speech online. Like, the free speech is not hate speech. That Tim Walz guy was actually saying that.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Hate speech. Free speech does not include hate speech. Like, what are you, by whose definition? Yours? A guy who thinks tampons should be in the boys' room?
So here's the deal: Walz is the poster child for style over substance politics. He's a walking liberal arts thesis with executive powers. He'll smile, nod, and give a 20-minute answer about shared values when someone just asked why the streets still haven't been plowed. He's not leading, he's narrating a documentary. Nobody asked to watch Joe Rogan called him an NPC that glitched into the government, and honestly, that's giving him too much credit, at least. NPCs are predictable. Walz is unpredictable in the worst way. Like a blender with the lid off, you press start and suddenly there's a smoothie policy all over your face, and nobody's cleaning it up. Greg Gutfeld wrapped it up best. Tim Walz is the result of giving a motivational poster, a taxpayer-funded pension, and Minnesota is a group therapy session trying to recover from